worry.
Oh, and by the way, I wanted to show you, I don't know if you could see.
This is now streaming live on YouTube.
Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Does that look like, it doesn't look like poison ivy, does it? Yeah.
Well,
it's streaming. All right, we're live. We're live. We're doing it. I have a feeling it might be more of this burn. This, I'm not sorry. I had to take my thing off. Sorry about this, folks. Had to go through this morning because we received a nasty little message from YouTube regarding a violation from a video that we did a year ago. And here it is. I'm going to just first screen share this with everybody before I actually, I have to start recording on this computer here. Have my backup. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host and researcher, Louisa. Today is Thursday, August 20th, 2020. That's 3 20s. That might be significant to some people. This is GoldFish Report number 552. And it's our weekly food for the soul. Hi, good morning. Let me just say hello and good morning to everybody before I get started. Okay, this is our weekly food for the soul with, of course, two of our very special favorite people, Dr. Scott and Vicki Werner, who are back on the GoldFish Report again this week to talk about helping our children heal and cope with these circumstances that are happening in our life right now, and particularly going back to school and how they can, we can help them transition back to school and cope with these really draconian measures. And, on one hand, I almost feel like we're the ones that need coping because we know different, but they don't really, it's like, it just seems like they have to, it's almost normal for them. What a terrible thing to say. But anyway, welcome back to the GoldFish Report. Scott and Vicki, good to see you both.
Yay, we're glad to be back, and we couldn't think of a better topic as children are coming into school. So we're ready to share a lot of insight, a lot of wisdom, a lot of support for parents to build up the momentum of success for our children.
And it's so important that we give them tools so they can cope in this, because, this whole thing of wearing masks and social distancing actually causes problems with education. They found that education, we need to be in a happy state, in a state where we can communicate. And let me tell you, these masks are keeping communication levels down to a minimum. We talked a little bit about that last week, but we'll talk more today.
Yeah, you can't even breathe, quite honestly, with these masks on anyway. So it's kind of a little bit ridiculous. But okay, I just need to warn everybody because in the event that you do see the channel, something happen with the channel, you see that, there's no new videos or, we received a statement today from YouTube telling us that we violated some community standards, some arbitrary community standard that was from last year's video. I'm just trying to pull this up to show you. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to screen share this real quick because I want everyone to just understand that if this broadcast is interrupted, and we hope that it's not, because we hope our guides are watching over us. This notice that I received, this was about a GoldFish Report 387 that was on 9/11. It was a special on 9/11. And this is my appeal that I'm submitting here because it tells me that this is a violation of community guidelines that has to do with hate speech. Here it is. It's talking about hate speech. Now, folks, I don't hate. Do I ever show any hate towards anybody? Do you think it's my intent to ever express hate to anybody? But I'll be honest, if you can't have an opinion that's different than YouTube's, because then they'll just consider it arbitrarily hate when it's not hate. So this is what I did. In my appeal, I gave them notice that by Presidential Executive Order 13925 preventing online censorship, they are now a public forum, and opinions that differ from their own are still within First Amendment protection. So I did inform them also, because you can't really scroll through that now because I already sent it, but those were my screenshots, indicating that that there was no hate speech, there was no intent for hate speech, and therefore it doesn't meet. So therefore, it is protected under the First Amendment, and via that executive order, which took them out of being a forum, and I'm sorry, took them out of being this category of platform, and put them into the public form, a public, like a public square, so to speak. So it changed their status. So then First Amendment protections do apply. So, and I did warn them that they are liable for damages, both punitive and actual, if they continue. That's all we can really do, unless we want to do a class action lawsuit. But I just wanted to let everyone know that, leading up to this election now, it's crazy. They are canceling, they are deleting, removing accounts on Twitter. We've already had our first channel deleted after the first election in 2000, the first election in 2016. So just anything can happen, folks. We hope and pray that this doesn't happen, but we just want you to be aware that that would be the cause for us to go off air if something were to happen. Would be this election. So anyway, back to what's happening. Yes, because of this election and because of this coronavirus political pandemic, scamdemic, we have all these draconian measures now that are being placed on our kids. My kids personally want to go back to school in person, but they're going to do distance learning for now, because there's going to be a spike. There's already reports of schools who have gone back. There's already a spike in cases. And, my opinion is that it's going to be a disaster in terms of figuring out how to really manage this, when it's, on one level, if this many people have it, then most everybody should have this coronavirus. Isn't that the case, Scott?
When I was trained early on in pediatrics, even, herd immunity was the most important way of preventing outbreaks and spread, because you already spread it to the healthy population. The healthy population develops immunity, and so they can go out and not worry about being reinfected because they've already got immunity. But over the years, we've been indoctrinated that we need to immunize for herd immunity. And they're coming out and finding that immunizations don't cause herd immunity like they were teaching us. Vaccinations only last a certain amount of time because they're being received in the body in a way that the body, when you inject something in the body, you don't go through the primary immune glands that are located, believe it or not, in the sinuses and the throat. In fact, we've been removing everybody's proper immune responders, the tonsils and adenoids, and people don't have the capacity for viral and bacterial infections anymore because they removed the direct immune responders. And here we are injecting this into our bodies. And so we get a bloodstream and a tissue response, which is different. And so when we're exposed to things through the respiratory system, our body's not recognizing these things as it used to when we actually had immune system glands that would respond to these. And so through the years, by removal of all the tonsils and adenoids we've been removing, we've actually caused an increase of hyperimmune responses that are causing all of the autoimmune. When I was younger, as a medical doctor, the amount of pediatric cases of autoimmune disease was almost negligible. It was so small. And now we're having about a third of our teenagers having autoimmune difficulties, which is extreme, and it's almost planned by the indoctrination of the doctors and the money-making capacities of doing, TNAs, tonsils and adenoidectomies in children, that has led to this. And so we're having, we're living in a whole new world that has been literally planned for years. And, we all know who's behind those plans, but I don't want to talk about that this time. I want to talk about how we assist our children and help them do better in school, learn better, because believe it or not, the teaching system, even though it's been downgraded, we're actually not at the level we were back in the 60s and 70s. Most of our children are testing lower. Math skills have decreased the most. Our reading skills have gone down because we watch videos instead of read. Reading is fundamental for getting information into our brains because it literally stimulates the visualization cortex to create a picture within our mind of what we're reading. And when we see things, it's hard to construct visualization. And visualization, believe it or not, is a very powerful form of learning. And that's why it's important for us to read, to write, to actually integrate these things through creation in our mind in various ways. And so the dumbing down of America has been huge. And they found when they can dummy us down, they can control us easy.
Well, that's actually so interesting you say that because the FBI vault just released a a record here, which I'm going to screen share. I'm sorry that I have to bring this up, but FBI Federal Bureau of Investigations FBI records called the Vault. It's called Protocols of Learned Elders of Zion, and when you look into this, you're actually describing exactly what they're telling. Suggesting that they do is dumb down all the children, dumb down all the what they call goyim and so forth. And I'm not trying to make this political, but unfortunately, this does seem to be exactly what's going on. Okay, so what do we do in the meantime while we have these big bad people in the world trying to do this, and we have a lot of good people in the world trying to fight back and resist? These are constraints imposed on our kids. They're going to have to go back wearing masks. They could get sick. They could have other consequences, like you're saying. It reduces your oxygen, so you're not going to be able to learn as well. So it is kind of, in a sense, dumbing kids down. What on earth are we going to do, Vicki?
Well, I think right now we have a generation that has more external influence than ever in history. So our children are watching videos from other kids, from all of these different platforms such as TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and all of these platforms. They have instant access to the lives of so many other people. And now our children also have so many conveniences. So they have access to any answer that they want for a test. All they have to do is ask Siri for it, or they have, or Alexa.
Google it.
And they can Google it, and they have all this instant access. So they have a lot of influence, but virtually no inspiration. And those two categories are the meeting point of where children are really struggling right now. So what do is their external world is super hyper stimulated, which means we need to really build a lot of language and understanding on the interior, which we underestimate the value of our thoughts and our emotions. And children they're not taught to manage those. They're not taught to understand what those are. We have so many stimulations that our children are hyper stimulated. So they're always in that stress response. I've talked about this many times, that the average teenager is under the sympathetic response 6 hours a day. And which means they're not getting any new information. So their learning is disabled significantly. Now, when we have, here in Utah, there's photos that are going on in the school systems that they're putting these plexiglass around the desks, you know, these little dividers. And so it's almost building up this cubicle sense of just mass production. And so everything with our education system, everything of what we're setting it up to be, is we're programming our children to be programmers. We're programming them to be just this factory, non-thinking, non-deliberate, just answer, you know, just follow directions without asking any questions. And they're not taught to think properly. And so at our home, I know, so my background is in education and early development. That was a primary thing for me. I am the eternal mother archetype. And so just that nurturing sense is just the mechanics of who I am. And we all know that children, you know, 6th and 7th, 8th grade is a really big struggle for most kids. And our children now are in high school. Our youngest children are now in high school. But what we did in our home is, you know, we've had a number of conversations over the years, and communication is so paramount with our children. And unfortunately, let's be real, most parents are texting their children, you know, come to dinner, texting their children, what do you want, you know, texting their children, pick up so the communication is blocked. Now they're with masks with their kids and with their friends. And so the facial expression, we struggle with what people are communicating because we're not seeing their facial expressions. I have a huge background in Chinese face reading, and we all read faces all the time. And but now we're blocked by that because we may not always know what we interpret, but when we see somebody's face and their expressions, we determine how we feel by how they feel, and we mimic those expressions all the time. That's how we build empathy, is by micro mimicry of the person that we're talking to. We connect by their facial expressions, and it helps us have a sense of empathy and connection. Now that has been significantly stifled. So the paramount thing that we have to build up is better communications in our home. We have to build up our children's ability to have an identity, because their identity is out of whack right now because they're so overstimulated. And we need to really dial in on emotions and thoughts. And I want to share what we created years ago. And I still have this set. This is on our door. This is on our door as we exit the house every morning. And there's 2 things that I placed. The one I have, choose your mood.
Put it closer.
So,
yeah, right.
Good, yeah.
Well, it's backwards, but
yeah.
No, it's actually, no, to us, it's okay. We can.
Oh, good.
Okay.
To us. Yeah. It's good.
Because I always teach my children, if you don't decide your mood, then somebody else is going to decide it for you. And you can be subject to your environment all day long and let the old Newtonian belief system that of cause and effect, that the external environment is going to determine how you feel, or you can just set it up first thing in the morning. So every morning I would have my children, especially when they are in middle school, I would say, what is your mood today? I am what? Claim it, because whatever follows I am is going to find you. So decide I am and make that claim. I'd make them say this out loud. Then I'd have them do declarations. Now we'll go into declarations. I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit on this, but a declaration or an affirmation, we all want, you know, it's a way that through repetition, we build up our subconscious programming and we rewrite our subconscious. So the ones I have for my children, and we created this together, is I love learning new things. I embrace new opportunities. I treat myself and others with respect. I am a great friend and I have great friends, and I am super smart. They're super simple, very easy. And I would make them, and of course, initially they're like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, well, I'm the mom. And then I would follow it up with smile, you got this. and it sets the tone for the day. And when you set the tone with structure and acknowledgement, and you set your baseline, it's very similar to when you juice some fresh veggies and in the morning, and you have a nice workout, and you start your day in a nutrition and exercise. You tend to do better throughout the day because you want to make sure you maintain that muscle and strength. And this is very, very similar. When you set structure first thing in the morning, you're building on momentum and building on that structure.
Okay, that's great. Can you just show that one more time so I can take a screenshot of it? Nice and close, nice and close.
Okay, we need to talk so we get it to appear.
Little closer. There we go.
Closer.
That's
Good.
good. Oh, wonderful.
There we
Love
go.
that.
Yeah.
Lovely. Everybody take your screenshot. That's wonderful. No, but you're right. I mean, in kids, kids, what do they think? Do they think that we're just going to there's this whole debate about whether you should be a friend to your kids, and it's like when they're older, yeah, but not when they're kids. And so when they're kids, you're their mother, and you have to be that that leader in their life, that guide in their life. So that's then they think you don't. Today kids, and I was just talking about this with Steve, who I was just talking to before we came on. He had to go, he wasn't able to stay, but he did say hello to everybody. We're all parents, and we're all struggling with this, I don't know, fact resistance in our kids, where they just, feel like maybe because, like you're saying, they're so hyperstimulated, they have all this, I would say, invasion of information. It's information overload, and so I don't know, it's a very liberal kind of, it's a public school, so of course it's a very liberal pushed agenda. And when I say liberal, it's kind of like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was adolescence, or if it was just something that happened in the school system. But there's changes I see in kids that I don't understand, that they are this way at this age, where they are, I mean, they don't have a good sense of reason. I mean, they don't have maybe a good sense of foundation to begin with. That might be why. You think?
Well, let's think about the ones that they see as their influencers are exactly that. They're influencers. And what are they influencing? There's so many people that are famous for being famous. There's no structure, there's no intellect, there's no contribution to humanity, there's no betterment of mankind, there's no life coaching type thing. They're famous because they can wear the new latest leggings, or the new latest makeup, or
nothing.
And that sets a tone of really slippery slope of what our children have that influence, when that's constant influence. I had a conversation with our 15-year-old last night that we really dialed in. And I think, I really recognize there's different personality types. That works for one child isn't necessarily for another. There's some that need a lot of flow, and there's some that need a lot of structure, and you have to recognize those personality types. That's a whole different topic. But once you recognize the needs of a child and not make that meet the dichotomy that you think they need to be in, like the worst thing a parent can do is try to mold their child after what either their own lack or their own desire for self. When we try to make these molds, then we set everybody up for dysfunction. But we had this conversation because she fears that she's lazy, because she lacks this sense of motivation sometimes, and doing online school was very challenging for her in the last spring, because she didn't have the structure, and she needed a sense of structure. And I kept reinforcing, she is a creative genius. Like, if anybody needs a card made, or if anybody they always go to her, because she's so creative. But she lacks inspiration right now. There's very little that is inspiring children. And when we don't have something in front of us that's the epitome of the carrot on the stick, what we need something to draw us towards something. And right now, everything is in stasis. The unknown is so much bigger than the known. And when this is going to end, and is it going to get worse? And you know, our children have fears that we never had. A fear that their greatest fear right now is that the person who sits at the desk next to them test positive, because in our school, if somebody who's, you know, they have their names lined out, and they have seating charts. If somebody in that classroom that is in the direct perimeter, they have to be quarantined for 2 weeks, and it blocks their education, and it blocks their relationship with their friends, and it blocks their activity. That scares my children right now, and those are fears we never had as kids.
You know, and when they can put us into fear and control, actually it decreases our ability for creative thinking and learning. And so right now, you know, the cabal, whoever you want to call them, is controlling the scenario so much that we've got to take that control back. Because right now, it's of such a magnitude that, you know, it's like Vicki says, we're in stasis. Instead of moving forward, we're literally stopped and even digressing in our abilities to have freedom, creativity, learning, and we need to take this by the reins as the parents of the children to enhance the creative energies. You know, it's like, I know families who are scared to even hug each other.
Yep.
They're afraid they're going to give each other the virus.
Someone in our live chat, sorry to interrupt, but you know, we do have a live chat, so let's go over there and see what's going on. They say, how do you make friends when they have to unsocial distance, when they are afraid? This is awful. It's true. And ArtoTube, when will I go fishing? I don't know. Maybe soon. So, but anyway, that's one thing. Look, I didn't really like fishing, but if I wanted to do something with my father, I had to go fishing because he liked it. So, you know, and I have those memories of us together. So it might not be, you know, your favorite thing to do, but sometimes we have to, you're absolutely right. We have to have, I wouldn't say, in some ways I would say more control, in some ways less control, because they're already being overly controlled as it is in the schools. They're being indoctrinated 8 hours a day by liberal teachers who have a different agenda, quite honestly. And my daughter came home from school and told me she was just sick of hearing this teacher talk about shoving liberalism down her throat and her opinion of who is good and who's bad. And my daughter knew better. You know, she knew different, and she knew this was an agenda that was being pushed on her. My other daughter seems to succumb to the agenda, which is saddening because she doesn't realize she's been trapped in it. She doesn't realize she's basically trapped in it, in a mental, you know, like prison. And I'm not saying, you know, there's anything wrong with her or anything. It's just that she's younger and she was
Influenced.
much more impressionable. She's been in the public system a little bit longer than my older daughter. Um, because my kids were in private school, and you know, because of the divorce and all of that, he took them out of the private school, which wasn't supposed to happen during the divorce. So, you know, there were all kinds of reasons for that. But yeah, we have to make sure that our kids understand that we're even in uncharted territory ourselves, because we are.
Yep.
We don't have all the answers, but we, as adults, you know, can assimilate this new information, and we'll make the best choices that we can moving forward. Because we can't give them a false sense of security either, because there's things we don't know. The only thing we can do is show by example. Like my kids, we had the storm, we had a few limbs and trees that had to come down, and we cut it down ourselves. My daughter didn't want to do it, but you know what? She did it. and we got it done. We worked as a team. We took the limbs off first. We took the trunk down second. So, that's how you cut a tree down. So these weren't big trees, but we had to do it ourselves. So it was a team project. So they don't like doing physical things, do they? They don't like working. They are quite lazy as teenagers. I guess when I was a teenager, I could say I probably was to some extent too. But I don't know if that's just the hormones, Scott. What is that?
Well, we need guidance. I was taught to work from the time I was a little kid. I mean, my grandpa had me driving his tractor at the age of 5. He'd say, okay, just let off put it in gear and go down the road and then put it out and I'll turn it around for you and come down the other road. But, I was taught to work from the time I was little, but I was given rewards for working. Like my grandma would have me weed her rose garden. And at the end of it, I would always know I'd get a reward. And she'd have me go down to the local store and she'd give me enough money that I could buy something if I wanted. And she'd always have me get her a Heath bar because that was her favorite treat. And, when I'd come back, she'd always tell me what a good boy I was. And, I was very fortunate to have my grandma. And when my mom remarried and married my current dad, we always would go out and we would work together as a family. And so I learned to work my entire life, and that kept going throughout my life because we have to teach our kids these things when they're young. Then they won't stray away from it when they're older.
Right.
Because we literally are programming our children right now.
Right.
And what they learn when they're young, they'll continue with.
Yeah.
And the problem is they're being programmed into being a little bit more lazy, a little bit more entitled, all these things that we weren't. And so we don't understand it, but that programming is coming through the public schools.
I want to point out that we have to look at what we set our children up for. Our children that are teenagers right now were the generation that came in when iPads were starting to come up or personal devices were coming up and children were getting. And what did we do when we wanted our children to be self-regulating? It wasn't self-regulating in creating an activity. It was self-regulating in programming. So we would turn on a Disney movie, or we'd plop our kids on the couch, or we'd hand over our iPad or our phone, and we'd have them entertain themselves. And now when they get a little older, then we get annoyed because they don't have any structure and they don't have any motivation. And I'm like, well, what did we
program?
What did we do to create that?
Well, I have to admit, you're right about that because, look, Vicki, you have 2 kids, right?
We have 10
we have 10 children together.
Okay,
So,
but when you were raising, but when they were little, you had the 2 girls together, right?
Yes.
For the most part, okay, just like I did. Now, when you're a busy mom and you're taking care of the family and running the household and all of that, and Baby Einstein came out and you could put these adorable little videos on, it was magic.
Yep.
It was magic because they were just enthralled and you could go do something for 5 minutes that you couldn't do because your hands were always watching them because you have to watch them all the time when they're little and they're crawling and they're getting around. You can't sit down and do nothing. I mean, I had, locks on my cabinet doors, but there was still things in the home that could, they could fall or get injured on or whatever. I mean, my one daughter never learned to crawl. She just kept falling on her face, the poor little thing. So she was a scooter. She ended up scooting around the house everywhere she went. But so unfortunately, it was by necessity when you need a 5-minute break because your body just gives out an exhaustion when you're a stay-at-home mom and you're taking care of your kids. If you don't have support or help around you, you just get exhausted, physically exhausted. You get short-tempered, you're tired because of course you're interrupted in sleep as well. You hardly get a full night's sleep really when your kids are young, and it's exhausting. and you have a spouse that doesn't know how to be supportive, is sometimes overwhelmed
or
themselves.
non-existent.
Yeah, or non-existent, exactly. So unfortunately, those videos were helpful as long as it wasn't on all the time. I mean, you know, if we were on an airplane ride, boom, wonderful, we got through the plane ride. You know, when it was used in that kind of regard, it was definitely helpful. When you needed to take a trip in the car and you had a fussy child, these are the realities of parenting nobody wants to talk about, but this is the reality of it, and it is difficult. It's challenging. It's possibly the reason why some couples don't have children, is that they don't want that burden. They don't want that responsibility. They don't want that, you know, and it can be burdensome at times. Not to say that we didn't sign up for it, but it's still sometimes burdensome because you just don't get enough time for yourself to decompress and to regenerate, recharge yourself. Everybody says, oh, you got to do it. But, you know, in actuality, when your children are little, you can't take your eyes off of them. You just can't. And when they're really little, and especially when you have a couple of them, then, you know, you have suddenly eyes in the back of your head then. So it's kind of like, it is very stressful and it's difficult. And I understand what you're saying. But I also understand, just like what Scott was saying, they bring in terms of being programmed. It's just like what Vicki was saying. Now they have these cubicles, and this is all leading to a socialist, you know, lack of identity. Remove your identity, just like you're saying, Vicki, that we need to give them a sense of identity, but because that is what's being removed. It looks like what you're saying, what I'm hearing you both saying, is that this is being removed. This is maybe more of this transhumanist agenda, or you can call it, you know, a socialist, you know, Marxist agenda. It's all the above. So, you know, this is what we're fighting against. But um, you're right, Scott. Like, where do these kids come up feeling so entitled? Is this in their genes? Like, where did it come from? These kids have this
No,
sense of entitlement that I have never seen. I feel so insulted and disrespected by them when they're behaving in such a manner like that. And it's like, where on earth did they get off thinking this way and thinking that they have some sense of entitlement where I just don't know. And it has to be through the public school education, because it didn't come that way in my home. The reason I had my daughter out there cutting those trees down is because she has to learn, she has to do some things herself. She can't just call somebody else to do it, because it's not somebody else's responsibility. It's your home, you take care of it. But it was also an opportunity for us to problem solve together, because they're not getting those skills in school.
No, they're not.
Believe it or not, they're not learning to problem solve. And for us, it was about learning to problem solve, learning how to cut the trunk and how to cut the right wedge in order to get it to fall in the certain direction we wanted, but also how to calculate where things were going to fall. And so it was a lot of geometry involved, but although it wasn't her favorite subject, but you know, and then of course there's other projects that we do together too. And this summer I'm supposed to be teaching them how to distill water using a pressure cooker, which we finally got the pressure cooker. So we're just waiting for that experience to happen, because these are life skills, but these are team building. These are things where you're hands-on with your kids, as you're both talking about, is actually spending time with them, getting them off the phones, getting them off the video games. Those are the worst things. We have people commenting in the comment section about how uh, you know, this one grandmother said, I gave my kid books on how to think out of the box. They both quit high school and are now very successful. But, you know, I mean, you know, the cell phone, she says this, yeah, the cell phones are making the kids zombies. It's not teaching them critical thinking skills, nor is it teaching them planning and strategy and things like that. They're not getting on these cell phones. So, you know, that's why I do these projects with the kids, because I'm trying to get them to learn how to plan and to think in ways that, well, you're just not allowed to think that way in school, though, because you have to, they teach to a test. So you have to do it their way. And then the teachers retain their jobs if your students do well. That's not the way we should be teaching, Vicki.
Yeah, I have some suggestions for parents and grandparents that will hopefully these are all things we can integrate. And I don't want to use manipulation or covert, but just recognizing as a parent that your role and responsibility is to be a guiding force. And number one thing that parents can do and grandparents can do is write down a set of rules of what type of energy is allowed in your home. Now, Now, we may think, well, like, we'll stand at the door and like, no, you can't bring that, you can't watch that kind of horror movie, or you can't do any of that. We're not talking about that level right now. What I'm talking about is the quantum field, the energy field, the fifth dimension, and that we create, if we hold the line with the energy that we have and we desire, it will infiltrate into your environment. And when our children are unstable about what that is, they're subject to any, hold the line and raise the vibration. So number one, write down your house rules. Some of those would be no cell phones after 5 o'clock, or, you know, all phones down during meals, that we have meals together, that we speak with kindness and respect to one another, that voices are not raised, that we keep our home in order, that we keep our environment in order, that we treat everyone in a supportive manner, that there's certain music or certain genre that is allowed and isn't allowed. And you don't even have to display this, but you look at that and you hold the line of what the house rules are, and you hold that intention and you bring that vibration, you project that vibration. And so you set the tone with your emotions, you set the tone with the rules of your home, and then build upon that and hold the line. Because there's entropy and entropy, and we do create order by holding the line in order. Number two is we mirror the environment that we want our children to have. And so when we have interactions with our children and they're communicating with us in body language or in what we see, how they hold themselves, walk to your children and have a conversation and ask them if they, you know, if you notice that they just walked in the room and somebody's watching the news and they hear something, stop for a moment and say, how does that make you feel? Now, I'm going to tell you, most children are going to say, I don't know, I don't care, I don't know. But then say, okay, so this was what was just barely talked about. Is there any concerns that you have? Is there anything that you don't understand? Is there a feeling that you have? And then have those communications. Same thing with when they come home from school. If they're not forced to have critical thinking there, encourage it in your home. What was the best thing about your day? What was the thing that made your day great? And encourage them to think about that. What was the most challenging thing about your day? What could you do different if that experience happened again? And have those conversations. I have never let a day go by that I don't kiss my children, even my adult children who walk, you know, when my son's 24 years old and walks in the room, he knows I'm going to kiss his head. He knows I'm going to say, I love you. He knows I'm going to, and, you know, they'll just kind of like, sometimes, but most times they just know that this is mom. She's going to love me. I'm just going to have to just suck it up and accept it. So those are things, have the conversations and ask them about their day. And, you know, rather than projecting, who do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? That's so far out there. And so from a mentoring standpoint, I don't even know what I want to be when I grow up, and I'm 49. So when to ask my 15-year-old what that is, it's too broad. It's too big out there. But we can ask them, who do you feel that you are today? What do you feel about yourself today? And then from that language, build upon that. If they have a negative thought form, now again, 95% of our thoughts are in a negative stance, and it's repetition. And so we have to flip that on its head. And so how do we do that? We come back to I am, and we create affirmations and declarations. And children will resist initially. I'm not saying that we live in this utopian, that our children, that we can program them and mold them, but we can influence them. And when we're giving our influence, our children's influence to the Kardashians more than ourselves, then we have to look in the mirror.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so when they have a negative thought form, say, how can we improve that? Have them do this critical thinking. What do you wish that was differently? Then and you want to magnify it. So if they say, I'm ugly, then that's a belief that they have somewhere in their consciousness that was programmed in them. So then say, well, what could we build upon that? I'm beautiful and I'm intelligent. I'm beautiful and I'm kind. And then we all have what's called the reticular activating system. It's how we drop into the subconscious. And as I was saying earlier, our subconscious programming will happen through repetition. And the more we say that, and the more we want it, we claim what we want to become, we build upon the energy of that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
oh, go ahead.
no, I mean, there's something to that. Of course, Scott, almost every time we do a report, we have to cite Louise Hay and her lovely divine feminine wisdom that she brought to the earth, because her books are totally life-changing. And even just the concept of a thought that can be changed was just groundbreaking for me when I discovered her books when I was 19. But you're absolutely right. The affirmations, the repetition, that's how you reprogram. That's how you program or reprogram, right? Is repetition, and repetition to the point where it just replaces, what the old was, to the point where the old, don't even recognize it anymore. But yeah, and you're right. They are lacking inspiration. That's a problem. That's not good, because then they don't access their creativity and their creative gifts and their intuitive creative gifts when they lack imagination. And that's serious, folks. This is what's happening in our school system. So what do we do, Scott? What were you going to say?
Let's talk a little bit about this spiritual nature of humans. They've found through socialist agendas, if you can get people away from prayer, away from belief in a higher being, you're more easily controlled, because you don't have that energy of creation, of organization coming into you, because they've shown when we pray, we actually have energy. They've shown this through scans even, that as we pray, hummingbirds came by to reiterate what I'm saying, is that they've shown our creative centers actually light up as we're accessing the divine. Now, I'm not talking about religion. My son just, every time I start talking about this stuff, he says, oh, we need to have a separation of church and state. No, that's not what the founding fathers wanted. What the founding fathers wanted was the state not controlling the religions, and having the religions
Balance.
the freedom to
Right.
discuss what they discuss. Now, in the schools, they've taken away prayer. In Congress, our socialist agenda is they've taken prayer out of it. They don't even want you swearing on the Bible anymore, because they don't want any of us believing in higher law, because they want us to be a law unto ourselves, but they want to control that law through despotism. Despotism is one
Yes.
world control, one person controlling that one world control.
That is the agenda in the book of the Learned Elders of Zion, the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion that we just mentioned in the beginning of our report. That's what they talk about, despotism.
And the Mossad
their goal
teaches that, and the Mossad, is the CIA of the intelligence community of Israel. And our CIA is also very attuned to this control. They have to control everything. And instead of controlling it for our freedom, it's actually become control to control everything and move it into despotism.
Yep.
And sorry about that. But, even the school system is engineered to do that. And now that they've removed any type of spirituality. I mean, they're even trying to remove us doing the Pledge of Allegiance. In many schools, they don't even want us doing that anymore. You know, in the games, they don't want us doing our national anthem. They don't want us have any spirit of continuity and being together. They want us separated. And this mask thing, the social distancing, is actually a method of separation from humanism into transhumanism.
Yeah. Oh. So we have, who do we have here? Careful Carpenter. Good morning. Narcissists have the greatest despotic role in our lives. It's quite true, actually. So this is the problem. We have this agenda, you know, and I think one of the things that my example was trying to make about me and my kids cutting the trees down in our property was that we have to play an active role in our world. We can't sit by passively. We have to take an active role. And one of the things that, I mean, I have been persecuted for going to a town hall meeting and in public, a public forum, to ask for redress of grievance regarding the civil justice system. I took my kids with me. We were expecting this to be a really wonderful event to get my kids to, take my kids to meet the governor, and how exciting it was for them. They were so excited about it. And it turned out to be um, they persecuted me for that. They continue to persecute me for that, but I did not relent. I've been fighting it back. I showed my kids that, that you need to stand up for yourself, that you need to be an active member. You can't, in other words, I didn't want them to learn to be a victim of any kind whatsoever, that they have to, sometimes take things on the chin and keep going. You're not going to win every battle, but as long as you focus on winning the war, that's what's most important. You don't want to lose the war. A battle may be lost here or there, but the focus is on what the parents need to be doing, I think, is showing more of an example to the children, that to our kids, that you play an active role in your life. And we, the people, let's not forget, this is a country of the people, by the people, for the people. So this is by the people, consent of those. They govern the consent of the governed. They are elected by the consent of the governed, right? So we have, however, unfortunately, left the store. We've left them in charge to run the store, and they're robbing it left and right because we've all left the store. And now we're all complaining about where we are because everybody got sick of the corruption in politics. Nobody held anybody accountable. Nobody, we have a recall. The Constitution was intended to have checks and balances. And if the people don't use them, and they're counting on people being dumb enough to just and be not smart enough to do these things, or be too lazy to take any initiative. And unfortunately, it's for whatever reason, they're right. They were right, because we have a recall. So anyone who's elected can be recalled if they violate their oath of office, or if they commit a crime, or if they're not holding up their duties as a public official. They need to be removed so we don't get these fascist agendas into our schools that are destroying our families and our kids to begin with. So the whole idea is showing our children by example, as you were saying, Vicki, absolutely, that you have to take an active role in your society. Whether you like it or not, it's the society you're in. And if you don't like it, you can certainly leave and go to a socialist country like Venezuela. Well, you'll be much happier. Because
not really.
Well, I'm being facetious. They want socialism. Go get it. Nobody's stopping you. But you're not going to make this country, and God help us. Right now, the biggest thing we can do to help our children is for this generation to get up and do what we need to do what's right, take back our country, and show these children that it's not okay to make this Trojan horse of identity politics destroy the morals and the principles and the values and our Constitution. Because, I mean, they'd be happy to have no Constitution whatsoever, like you said. And Scott, it's not a coincidence that on the day we did our report, we haven't talked about this yet, Scott. On the day we did our report called In God We Trust, we recorded that report, Scott, at what, 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning?
Yes.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jim Jordan tweeted, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio tweeted that that same day was the day that was
The
coined
anniversary.
in the anniversary of when "In God We Trust" became our national motto, and that was put on our money. You know, it's on our money, but that became our national motto on that day. No coincidence, Scott. Did you tell Vicki?
Yes, I did. And you know what's interesting is we have a fraction of people out there, the socialists, who want to remove that from our money. They want to remove it from everything, go to the cryptocurrency so we have no control over our money. And that's what communist China does.
Mm-hmm.
They have no currency, they have just socialist money available. And if you do anything wrong, they take your money away and you suffer. And so they use it as a form of control.
Yeah.
He who controls the money is the ruler.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have despotism and one person ruling the nation that you live in or the world that you live in, they control the money and they control your life through the money. Money is energy. And if they can control all the money, they can control you.
Yeah. So I think what Vicki is saying by showing these examples, I mean, this is what I'm getting from it. By showing these examples of, I mean, we had house rules when we were younger, but I think I need to have another version of that. And also have, because it's always a reminder, these are affirmations, like you're saying, and it does reinforce these ideas and it does reinforce these concepts. And it does, it plants those seeds in them, and that's all you can do. You can't control the kids, but you can try to guide them, at least while they're under your roof, right? As best as you can. And also your sign that you held up earlier, which was also wonderful. This is really great because this is helping them reprogram when they get home. Is it tough? Yeah, it's very, very tough. Is it the world that we're living in right now? It is. So, and that's another reason why I want, my kids can still see their friends after school. It's almost like homeschooling then, and if that's what you have to do, then that's what you have to do. I hate to take that social component out of my kids' life, but they can still, then I have to make sure that they have a social component outside of school because they need it. But sadly, with this excuse of COVID, being used to, scare everybody into communism. There's nothing we can do other than we can control what's going on in our home, and that's about it right now. And they're trying to control that as well, to mandate that we have to wear masks in our homes. They can go as far as I'm concerned.
Oh.
I mean,
when Biden and Harris said, right now you need to start wearing masks all the time outside. And I'm like, hell, he's trying to act like he's the president already of despotism, controlling what you do even outside. And, the outside is where you go to breathe, connect to nature. And oh my Lord, it's so interesting. You can see the agenda right there.
Yeah, you can't have that. Sorry, I have my thing off. No, but Vicki, I think, our top points for today that, our takeaway points.
I'm sorry I get off track.
No, not at all, Scott, because it's all, no. We have to look at this from a dimensional perspective, because we are dealing with humans. We're multidimensional. We have to deal with our kids in a multidimensional way because we have to deal with their spirituality. Of course we do. And as parents, we're trying our hardest to overcome this indoctrination that they're getting in the schools. So this, I'll tell you, this election is so important that we get this right. And it's really not about Democrat and Republican. It really is about whether you want to try to preserve the America that we have inherited, the America that our founders, established, and that many generations of Americans shed blood to keep, to maintain, or are we talking about, versus a very bleak, dark? We're really talking about, East Germany. I mean, we're talking about communism. We're talking about nothing that anybody in America wants, and we have to stand up now. We are out of time.
Yeah, and I really want to make something very clear for all of us, that we chose to embody at this time for a purpose. There is no accident that our children are where they are, that we are where we are, that we are in this country, that this thing is going on right now. And it's not about, I don't want to bring any kind of religious text about karma or anything like that. If we just go from the bottom line that we have a consciousness that is greater than us, that we chose by nature and divine to be here, that we are a contributor to all things, that we, first of all, have to recognize we contributed to where we are today, which means somewhere in our consciousness, in the group or the butterfly effect or quantum physics or whatever language you want to say, we contributed to where we are, and we can contribute in a better space. Now, how do we do this on a global stance? Stop living in fear. Now, I will say that is my biggest challenge. I guarantee that everything in my life is saying it are opportunities for me to stop living in fear. But we have to take ownership of our consciousness and our ability that here we are on this earth school. It's a school, it's an education system. From the global standpoint, we're here from a soul level to evolve, to expand, and to learn. And we have to let go of grievances. We have to raise our consciousness. Our hearts have a strong ability of projecting energy. And if we hold in our hearts love and forgiveness or any kind of grievances on a personal level, and we hold intention, I think it's really healthy right now to hold intention of protection around our president, of building up the spiritual connection so that he has a divine connection at all times, that any negative agenda be removed, and hold that thought, hold those emotions. We have a greater impact than we give ourselves credit. Same thing now on the macro and the micro in all things. So in your home, if you see your child scrolling and they're just lazy, and you say, get up and put this away, do this again and do it again and do it again, and we program that they're lazy, or we program that we can't depend on them, or we program that kind of thing. Again, take ownership on this. Now I'm going to bring it back to Ho'oponopono. Dr. Hugh Lin, what did he do? These were criminally insane people. And what did he do? I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. And he held the intention. And so we got to remember that all of these lower density forces are very subject to change, that they don't have a lot of strength to stand on. So we can be the greater influence. We can choose to be the greater influence. So when we see our children, and we got to manage our thoughts, we got to manage our emotions. We see them walk in the house, and you're like, oh, you're going to just, and we're like, oh, wait, I contributed to this. How can I contribute to a better stance? Again, I create a declaration for myself. I create a declaration for my family. You can use it as a mantra. You can use it as the laws for your home and what your energy. You set the tone, and you create a gate that you're not going to cross. So if you know that you're not going to have a negative thought about your child that's going to be a space of judgment or criticism, again, I will say, if you are having that, look at yourself, because you have criticism and judgment for self, guaranteed. So start working on those kind of things. If you have judgment about the way your child looks, look in the mirror, because you have judgment about the way you look, and start doing your inner work. How do we build the momentum for the spiritual side of this? How do we build the momentum for creativity, for possibility, for hope, for inspiration? We meditate, because when we meditate, we burn off excess old negative thought forms. We write down what we want to create, and we keep our attention where we want to go and stop paying attention of where we've been that hasn't been healthy. And then we create an energy in our home. Now, for me, I'm going to bring it back to essential oils. I diffuse oils that I like that are a higher frequency. It's light, it smells good, it feels good. I'll diffuse frankincense, I'll diffuse citrus oils that will bring up an emotional, to elevate emotions. And maybe in the afternoon or in the evening when it's time to settle in, I'll diffuse ones that are very calming, very relaxing. We have one-on-one conversations with our children. We pray with our children. We set the tone to like, how do you want, our children are rushing out the door this morning, have a great day. And they're, there's a grumpiness because they tend to fight as they are getting out the thing. And I just, with love, will remind them the possibilities that they can choose their mood. And then another thing we can do that's very simple, play music that's very uplifting and fun and light.
And dance.
And dance around. We dance in our kitchen. And if our kids are kind of grumpy, I'll turn on a happy song. And, like the one from Zootopia, I feel better when I'm dancing. You can't have a bad mood when you're playing that song. Yeah. So play music that is fun and just set the tone for the environment.
Yeah. I'm actually dousing myself right now with lemon essential oil because let me tell you, there's nothing more. You're absolutely right, Vicki, and that's why I started doing this, just because I loved when essential oils started to become popular. I was in a spa somewhere. It was a school, actually. No, it was a spa. It was a spa, and I loved the scent that was being expelled in the air from this atomizer or whatever, it was.
Diffuser.
A diffuser, rather. And it was a lemon type scent. And I have to tell you, it's like, and then of course they put that music on and you're all relaxed and all that. And it really does make a huge difference. I mean, aromas can totally lift and change your mood quicker than almost anything else because it goes right to the brain, right, Scott? It's like direct. It's
factory bulb, goes straight into the brain.
Yeah, so it's our one sense that goes direct into the brain, into the subconscious, for sure.
And different oils for different people. Here someone is saying peppermint is the oil of joy. Exactly. Someone's saying, can cannabis can be used in a similar manner as essential oils? Well, we knew that question was going to come up.
Well, you can sure smell it if it's around.
Yeah,
I
sure.
go down to Vegas and it's like, holy cow.
Yeah, I'm sure it will change your mood. So someone's asking about C60, and I don't really try to endorse any particular products specifically on the channel here, but did you have any comments or anything you wanted to say about? Do you know much about C60 at all?
Oh yeah, well, I don't want to advertise anything either, but the least expensive thing you can do is get a citrus oil, wild orange, lemon, tangerine. They're all very uplifting and cause good energy to penetrate your brain.
And if it works on adolescents, if it works on teenagers, I'm just going to get a whole bunch of it for my daughter's rooms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good.
Now the subliminal effects of all of what we're talking about, subliminal is something the CIA studied over and over again. In fact, they use it in commercials, to sell us things, because it tells us, it literally programs our brain that we need to ask our doctor about this, or we need to buy this, or whatever. And they found subliminal communication is more powerful than the spoken word, because we can judge it through our conscious if it's spoken, but subliminal goes directly into our subconscious. And our subconscious is in control 90% of the time. And so if they can subliminally project things at us, they can control us. Now, how do we switch that up? We subliminally, through Ho'oponopono, send love, forgiveness, compassion, gratitude. Subliminally, this can shift people's thinking around you, especially if you project it right at them. And I've been being taught this by Saint Germain. Telepathy is subliminal projection, and it feels like it's coming from their own thoughts, their own mind. And we can unprogram people by sending telepathic communication. And in fact, he's telling me to tell everybody, you know, send I love you. And the next projection is I desire you to wake up to the truth. And by doing those two things, we can do more subliminal unprogramming than any other way.
Folks, I just want to say, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up so we can get it recommended into more video feeds for everybody. If you give us a thumbs up, it'll be recommended more often. We have a lot of people making comments here. Some are kind of funny. Sniff a puppy or a baby blanket could have some effect on some people if you have an association with it. But that's the whole key, though, isn't that right? Vicki and Scott, is creating that association too. So how about you pair? How about pairing? Let's use Pavlov's example, right? How about pairing the sign and the house rules sign, always where you have this essential oils
where the
diffuser.
diffuser is.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that how I pair, so I want to come back another thing, communication and connection. So we have to recognize that we're all struggling with our identity. You communicate, build and enhance your communication and connection. Now, if you have a 16-year-old that you haven't touched and you feel bristly with, and they feel bristly with you, walk over and start massaging and loving on them. And they were like, get out of my room. like
I know.
touching me.
Yeah.
But depending on the child, you know, if you have young children, or how I do that, how I get into their energetic field. Our children sit on the floor a lot with our dog, and if they'll watch a movie, or if they sit on the couch, I will just come over and just touch them like this, or just play with their hair a little bit, and just like, hey babe, love you, and just little bit of touch, and then I'll leave the scene and I'll come back in. And most people love to have their shoulders massaged or their feet massaged, so you're not really getting in their personal space in kind of a pushing way. But I'll just say, hey, do you want me to rub on that a little bit? And I massage their feet, and then I'll say, if you want, I can put a little bit of oil on that if you want essential oil. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Our children are like, oh, I don't want to smell like that. My friends are coming over, I'm going to school, so that they get nervous about that. But that doesn't have to be. Touch your children and communicate with them. Keep eye contact, pay attention to them. Another thing that I really want to encourage is, if children feel like they're being bullied, if they feel like, if you notice that other people are overpowering them, one of the very simple things they can do is adjust their body language. Our body language is one of the strong communicators. And they may notice that if you watch your children and they're standing upright, if they lean on one hip, then they're not as stable. And I know this sounds really silly, but there's a lot of research about that.
Body language.
That when they're at their locker, ask them to pay attention to how they're standing. If they're leaning, then they're easily toppled over. And then you just tell them, and how I tell my children, keep your both feet forward and strong on both feet, that you're stable and strong and well balanced. And anybody in a power role, anybody in authority role, think about how they stand. They will stand in that sense of power.
Absolutely.
So it's these little subtle things that kids will say is weird initially, and then I always come back, well, it doesn't cost you anything. But the worst case scenario is you're back where you're at right now. give it a try. Know that my intentions are always to be supportive and loving towards you. And I watched it happen. I had one of our children was kind of leaning like that a lot. And I would just say, I'm just going to give you a gentle reminder, be conscious about the way you hold your stance. Because when you stand on both feet and you feel strong and well balanced, well centered, you're not as easily manipulated.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, it's very, very true. That's a good resistant way to be, I would say, what's the word?
Proactive.
No, well, what's the word? Hypnosis. It's like these suggested, you know, is it hypnosis? What's the word I'm looking for? No, never mind. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh,
I lost
all
it.
I was going to say was when I attended my physical examination course, we were always looking at body language. And we were taught, and there were studies to prove this, that if you just touch the patient's shoulder at the end of the examination, just non-invasively, just touch the shoulder, it actually developed more confidence in the doctor from the patient. And it was quite fascinating because just that little act of touching the shoulder demonstrated compassion, demonstrated the connection
They
to
taught
them.
you that in medical school?
Oh, yeah. It was shown that if you did this, in 99% of the people, it developed more confidence in the physician.
And trust, a trusting relationship between the two. Absolutely. It's just too many don't do it. But even though that's why I'm surprised you were actually taught that, because so many don't do that. So many are so
it's not taught in medical school anymore. There's so much that's not taught anymore. And it's fascinating because this whole social distancing is compartmentalizing us. And the way they control people in secret programs is compartmentalizing. Compartmentalizing. Yes. And if you can do that to people and social distance them, they will stop trusting. And trust is a very important thing. In God we trust. In our country we trust. But when we distance ourselves, we lose trust. And the socialists know this. And that's a part of the fear and the distancing and the masks. It's all a part of compartmentalizing us and removing that trust with each other.
Well, I'll tell you, we should start to wrap this up because I think we've had a really great discussion about this. I think a lot of, as you can see in our live chat, a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents, a lot of people, have suggested different things. Some people are saying they use orange skins. I've seen people like take orange skins and boil them in water, and you can get the scent through the house, or lemon rind or whatever.
They're diffusing the oils out of the skin.
Right. So so if you can't get the oils or a diffuser, you can just take lemons and you can do that, boil it, and exactly. But it does matter. And some of this too is just a choice in teaching our kids that there is a story that I heard, and I'm just going to say it real quick because I think it's such a great lesson. There was an elderly woman who was in a nursing home who had this beautiful window overlooking a park. And one day the staff came in and told her they had to change her room. So she was moved to a room, and the staff was another room, and the staff was quite surprised at her reaction because she was so cheerful and happy, and she had a good disposition. And they asked her about it. They said, why, you've been moved into a room where you have this big concrete post in front of your window. How is it that you had this beautiful view before and now you have this? And she says, it turned out that the woman was blind. And she says, happiness is a choice.
Happiness is a choice. I learned that when I developed diabetes and pancreatitis.
Yeah.
I was told I needed to say every day, I choose to be happy.
Yeah.
Because this helps repair
Mhm.
your pancreas and the sweetness of
Well,
life.
well, yeah, that makes so much sense. And so that's it. It's like you have to, there's days when, you wake up and it's just like, okay, nothing. And it's amazing how much you empower yourself when you do this. I have had some days where I've said, and I credit Louise Hay for this. I do love her. Oh, just really wish her spirit was still here. But
It is.
yeah, but
We're talking about her in her spirits
yeah,
airways.
exactly. Okay, that's wonderful because it really is very empowering when you wake up in the morning and you say, no matter what happens, I am not going to let it take my happiness from me. I'm not going to, whatever it is I will deal with, but it will not take my joy from me. And you really have to realize just that. You think that's that simple. It is very simple, but people don't do it because they don't understand how empowering it is. Self-empowering. It's so self-empowering. It's amazing. And just to know that this was a blind woman who didn't see that view to begin with and was moved into another room, the concrete block didn't matter to her. But to the nurse who had vision, she I guess this woman was just, again, happiness is a choice. You can um you can allow someone to take your joy from you because that's coming from the external world, right? Or you can say it's mine and no one's taking it from me, no matter what they try to do. And because don't you feel better when you're in a state of joy? Don't you feel better when you're in a state of happiness? And we do give it away. We do. We haven't been taught, differently. We haven't been taught really um, more of that. I think they come with more metaphysical teachings when you start learning these things, because you don't find it in religion. I mean, religion just goes through so much dogma. You have to read and read and read before you get to the real gist of something. And it could be helpful to some people, but to some people, you can learn it in a short story like that. When you realize how much of what you experience throughout your day is a matter of choice. Um, Even though you can't control what goes on around you, you can only control what happens within you. And if that's the most important message we give our kids, then we need to teach them that as well, because it teaches them some responsibility, some self accountability as well, that they are also accountable for their own feelings too. It's not always somebody else's fault or whatever. And that's why, again, you have to be a strong, and I'll tell you, it's a challenge. I mean, I'm a single mom. I didn't plan on this really, but the whole divorce fiasco is also part of their agenda to destroy the family. Um, and unfortunately, it lets other people off the hook that don't want to put the hard work in, don't want to stay for the long haul, don't want to invest in making a successful family. It lets people just, lets them off the hook, lets them evade their own responsibility. Once you create that nucleus, that nuclear family, that nuclear unit, that is your responsibility, period. So, and if you want to become a victim, or you want to become a criminal, or you want to be whatever, you're trying to evade accountability for that responsibility that you have. So, because some people are like, well, what if you're in an abusive relationship? Yes. If you're in an abusive relationship, that person who's abusing you is trying to evade responsibility because they're abusing you, right? So they're not even taking accountability for your relationship, let alone, I mean, for how they treat you, let alone how they're going to, treat the family. So why would you have children with somebody who, but, that's not always planned. Exactly. That's not always a good argument because, especially if you're married, sometimes you just don't see it. I can tell you that there's people that just snap one day and they're totally different. You just, they just live like almost a double life. There's when you get to some people, all of a sudden, you just find that this is just not somebody that you even know existed. It's like you see a Jekyll and Hyde with some people. So people just can't. They don't want to face up to the responsibility, and they try to find a way out of it, whatever that is, right? Whether it's through abuse, whether it's through drugs, whether it's through something else, they don't want to put that responsibility in. But we all have to teach our kids that personal responsibility for ourselves, for our own feelings, that we're only, giving away somebody, we really let somebody upset us means we're giving them power over us. It's really hard to explain to young kids, but again, it's just the idea. That story was very simple when you realize that you do have a choice how you react and how, so why don't we, do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing before we wrap this up?
Give everybody a blessing.
That's a good idea.
Okay. In the name of the Almighty, I am that I am, and by direction of the great divine director, we call forth all the angels, the archangels, beings of the elements, the higher beings of divine cosmic light and love. We ask that they come and assist us in projecting subliminal and project love and light and happiness to all the humans on planet Earth. Bless us to remove the fear with love and light. Bless us that we will project the energy of freedom out to the masses, that we project the energy of being capacitated with the love of God, that we project all the energies of the higher emotions of compassion, joy, peace, and bliss, that we each love each other, if not physically, subliminally, send love out to all the humans so that we raise our vibration, raise the vibration of the collective so that we become closer to God and the spirituality of love. We bless each and every one of you with health and strength, that your minds will be given that love from God, that it will give you peace, it will give you happiness, it will give you joy, and a feeling of contentment. We bless each and every one of you that you will have that mental stability, that you will be able to help your children, help those around you by telepathically communicating higher vibrations of love, light, and happiness. We bless you with these things, and that we will overcome the darkness that has crept over humanity and become light and love again. Do this and bless you with this in the name of the Almighty, I am that I am, and in the name of Jesus Christ and all the other ascended beings of light and love.
So it is. Thank you so
God
much.
bless everybody.
Thank you so much, Vicki. It was such a pleasure. Always wonderful to be with you, my dear. Always wonderful. And Scott, always wonderful. Thank you so much. I think everybody knows this is one of my favorite reports to do, Food for the Soul, folks. It's all about the soul. It's all about our quality of life and how we live it. So I hope that you all got a lot of information from this. I hope this was beneficial to you and to all the viewers who will be listening after this is uploaded. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And I'll be back on Friday. I'm sorry, not on Friday, on Saturday night for our POTUS report, our weekend edition POTUS report. And then, of course, our 555 series, not series, it's only one, sorry, but it's our special 555 report that we finally reached that milestone on our report. And we will be screen sharing an excerpt from our very first GoldFish report, so you can see where we've come from there, from then. And so, Vicki, it's always a pleasure. And Scott, thank you so much. And to everybody who's joined us, thank you so much. I know some of you just joined us, but you'll have to listen. You have to rewind them. You have to listen from the beginning. Thank you for joining in. And we'll see you all very soon. And enjoy the rest of your summer, folks. This concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.
Thank you.